In the city of Yekaterinburg, police used force in their attempt to close the Pandora's box of war. Some 5,000 arrests were reported across Russia yesterday, not just here in the Ural Mountains, but across 49 cities, which suggests that domestic opposition to a conflict still in its infancy will be harder than usual to contain.
Обними, если против войны.
Hug me if you are against the war, reads this TikTok post from Moscow on the first day of the invasion. Though TikTok, which is Chinese owned, has now blocked any new Russian content after the Kremlin outlawed what it calls fake news. For his own safety, we've also blurred the identity of this influencer, who has since deleted his TikTok post.
Oh, good. No one will ever know who the influencer was if you blurred his face. You know, that made a very popular viral TikTok that literally led the Russian government to actually fucking, you know, ban TikTok.
I want to deliver one thing to you. None of people I personally talked to, literally none of my friends and none of people I personally talked to supported today's events. Every single person I know is against the violence and against the crime which is happening right now.
Many Russian postings aimed against the Ukrainian government appeared to come from a shared script.
За время войны погибли сотни невинных детей, и на данный момент обстрел мирных жителей продолжается. Мы не хотим установки новых мемориалов и не можем допустить гибели невинных детей.
Russian school teachers have been issued with this new guidance on what to tell their teenage pupils about the so-called nightmare of genocide in Ukraine, which is that the war is not a war, but a special peacekeeping operation to, quote, denazify the country.
We want to see demilitarized Ukraine. We want to see Ukraine free from Nazi ideology and Nazi elements.
Are Russians being persuaded by state propaganda?
Now that the authoritarian government has flipped a switch and become totalitarian overnight.
Right always talks about Castro and Soviet leaders, but never talks about dictators like Augusto Pinochet, Fulgencio Batista, Ferdinand Marcos, who were all US-backed. Well, they did talk about it when it actually mattered. And more importantly than talking about it, they actually offered full-blown material support to those leaders. You can try to erase that history, but what you can't erase is, of course, the Wall Street Journal editorial board and its full-throated full-throated defense of Pinochet's regime. Which, of course, they also continued when Jair Bolsonaro became the leader of Brazil. So, you know, they are always on the wrong side of history, so it doesn't matter.
It makes polling even more difficult, so it's hard to tell.
Julia Ayaf is a fucking psychopath and is literally friends with Richard Spencer. I do not give a fuck about her point of view on Russia's unjustifiable actions. Okay? It's like all the biggest dumbasses are fucking gaining prominence as a consequence of this shit. Okay? Same with you. You think I'm friends with Richard Spencer? Are you insane? My most consistent fucking point of view on this shit is that I despise Nazis no matter where they are. No matter who they are, no matter who they're backing. I want to fucking denazify every country.
It makes polling even more difficult, so it's hard to tell. But I would guess that it would be fairly effective. I have a friend whose mother is from a Siberian village, small Siberian village, and the first coffin came home last week. But the young man's parents said they're not going to talk about it because they're afraid of getting a 15-year sentence for spreading fake news, you know, what is considered fake news about this.
Every war has its propaganda symbols, and for the Russians it's the letter Z, which first appeared on military vehicles and was then adopted by politicians, including Maria Butina, here urging the Russian army to keep going.
Работайте, братья. Мы с вами.
Wait. Oh my God. Maria Butina. What? Yo!
Vehicles and was then adopted by politicians, including Maria Butina, here urging the Russian army to...
Bro. Maria Butina. Okay. Maria Butina. God, I want to... All I'm saying is she's thrown it back harder for the Republican Party, okay, then I don't want to make a comparison. She's a Russian spy who famously was able to infiltrate a lot of Republican circles and was like a part of the NRA as a lobbyist. You know. And was incredibly effective at being a spy. She literally was like, bro, Julia Ioffe is a Jew. I don't care, dude. What the fuck? I don't care. She literally has a photo with Richard Spencer. What the fuck are you talking about, dude? I hate this fucking argument where it's like always like, oh, this person is Jewish, so like they've never collaborated with fucking fascists. Oh, okay, got it, dude. I got it. Okay, never mind. I showed you that like the fucking the Israeli businessman, one of the biggest like business oligarchs in Israel, directly was funding the right sector. Bibi Netanyahu is a Holocaust revisionist. Like, shut the fuck up. You say that about Zelensky? No, I always say Zelensky being Jewish has nothing to do with whether or not he's a fucking Nazi or not. He's just not a Nazi. Every single time people bring up Zelensky being Jewish, and that's why it somehow absolves him from, potentially being a Nazi, I tell you all the fucking time that that's not enough. That's not enough. Stephen Miller is a fucking Nazi. And he's Jewish. Anyway. Yeah, she had the guac 5000, okay? Maria Butina, good for her.
Keep going.
Работайте, братья. Мы с вами навсегда.
The Russian gymnast Ivan Kuliak even wore it on his leotard while standing on a podium next to his victorious Ukrainian rival. Russia's defense ministry says the Z stands for victory, celebrated here in Siberia with patriotic pop, from where the true horror of war seems quite deliberately a very long way off.
Jonathan Rugman with that.
Bro, someone said, imagine advertising war. What country do you live in? Hello? Hello? What do you mean, dude?
That report about the situation inside Russia. Well, earlier I spoke to the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. He's called for a special international tribunal to be set up to try Vladimir Putin over Russia's aggression. I asked him to explain why.
The Ukraine government has now asked us to do it. They're supporting it. Support is building up in the Baltic states and across Europe. The Foreign Secretary has announced today she's looking at this proposal. And what it does is it fills a gap in international law. At the moment, we could not try President Putin and his coterie for crimes of aggression.
Guys, you don't get it. If they want to try Vladimir Putin in an international criminal court, what's to stop him from passing a law in the Duma that dictates that then Russia would be able to nuke The Hague? You know what I mean? And I mean, obviously that would be fucking disgusting, right? If a country were to literally show and demonstrate how little they give a fuck about international law. I mean, that sounds ridiculous. No country has done that in the year 2002 in the United States of America.
The act of invading Ukraine and continuing to fight a war within Ukraine. The International Criminal Court can look at war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide, but the first crime, the crime of aggression, does need to be focused upon, and that's what a special tribunal would do.
Until a few weeks ago, the idea of a nuclear strike, a nuclear war between the superpowers seemed completely off the reservation, a madcap stuff. No one talked about it. He has now raised that issue, and however unlikely it still is, without alarming the British public or anyone else for that matter, do you think we should be having a more open and frank discussion about this possibility?
I know it's not right to believe President Putin, but the
Fuck is madcap stuff.
statement of the government is that they would only use nuclear weapons in the event of being under attack as a country or in the event of the existence of the very country being put in jeopardy. Now, none of these conditions apply to any justification for using nuclear weapons in this situation. And I do believe that there are more sensible people than President Putin at the center of the Russian government, and it would be difficult for him to pull the trigger as if on his own. He would be prevented from doing so.
So you obviously met Vladimir Putin when you were Prime Minister, perhaps also as Chancellor of the Exchequer, as did Tony Blair. What was he like?
Well, President Putin only understands one thing: strength. The first time I met him, we were talking about oil, and the same issue arose. He said, we will sell to the East, we don't need to sell to the West. And unless you meet our terms, we're not going to sell oil and gas to you. And of course, he did continue to sell oil and gas to us, but he was threatening us. And of course, I had to deal with Putin after the Litvinenko assassination. And we knew that Putin was planning other assassinations in Britain. We knew that he was directing them personally. And we knew unless he understood that we would fight back on these things, expelling diplomats,
As an Irishman, don't mind if I laugh at Englishmen talking about war crime tribunals for an invasion, act of occupation, resettlement. What do you mean? What? They would never do that, dude. You're doing whataboutism. Well, he's Scottish, but in general, English people talking about this is still fucking hilarious.
expelling the people who were the spies, tracking those people who were coming into the country to undertake these crimes, and giving security to the people who were at risk. And that happened for years afterwards. And I suppose
except for Boris Johnson, who was Ottoman, and Ottomans famously never invaded. So
our guard had dropped by the time the Salisbury poisonings happened. So he only understands one thing, and that is strength.
But if he only understands strength, and if that was obvious to you at the time, why did you and Tony Blair go out of your way to court both him and the rich oligarchs around him?
I didn't court any oligarchs up. I've got no interest in them and no influence.
You expanded the visa scheme that allowed them to come to the UK.
I'm sorry, Matt, the Tier 1 visa scheme was not to bring oligarchs to the United Kingdom to use laundered money.
I just wondered if the scrutiny was there to look into the origins of their money.
Well, look, if it had ever been brought to my attention when I was Prime Minister, I would have taken action. And I do believe that Keir Starmer is absolutely right to say that the government has been
Yeah, it's just, it never was brought to his attention.
far too slow to deal with this issue in the last few years, and particularly even in the last few weeks.
Do you think we now live in a new Europe, a new world of almost permanent insecurity as a result of Russia?
The hopes of 1990 that the war between East and West is over, that is gone. We're now dealing with a president who wants to use force rather than diplomacy, who wants to, if you like, bypass any international institution that would promote the rule of law, and of course who is prepared to go to any lengths, including threatening with nuclear power stations and potentially radiation from them, people that he wants to rule over. But we must try to avoid the continuing bloodshed that is taking place.
It was between him and Tony Blair that the oligarchs were able to invest in Britain. Labor screwed us in this country and fucked us all in the R's. Oh yeah, dude. Tony Blair, who of course famously upheld all of the values of labor. You know, classic. You know, definitely not a deviation from the history of from the history of the Labor Party. Whereas, of course, conservatives and Lib Dems, I mean, they never would. So that's good that you have that take.
Gordon Brown.
Unless you're like a fucking weirdo Green Party guy, which is hilarious, but...
Thank you very much. So yeah, we covered the Z thing. Oh, let's see. Let's see what the fuck's going on. With I love this. I love Jen Psaki dropping a Psaki bomb, talking about how, you know, actually everything we said about Venezuela was